a large part of my job when a club or a course brings me in to do some work is to get them to tell me what is special about their club or their course. What are the interesting backstories about the club? Everybody's got, whether it be sort of characters that are members of this club or iconic architectural pieces or objects on the course. But I'm really, when I first meet with somebody, I'm trying to ask as many questions as I can to get them to tell me things that they're not thinking of that could become icons for their brand. And I think with design and branding, if you got people talking about the brand and talking about a logo, then you've done something good.
Welcome, listeners, to the Whole Story podcast. This is Robby. Got Jonathan here and our guest, Seth, who will introduce more here in a second. But first, we got to welcome Jonathan back to America. Jonathan, Seth, he's been traveling all over the world, it seems like. So, Jonathan, welcome back. Give us kind of a final recap of your trip, maybe over the last week or so.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm actually back home in my normal habitat I'm trying to think of all the different places we did the podcast. I was outside my place in India, 2 a.m. in Nice, and in a hotel room in London. So the last week was actually pretty cool. Ended up going to Nottingham, like literally Robin Hood Forest, and found a nice little park up there, Rufford Golf Club. Played 9 holes. Well, I walked 9 holes. I played 6. So on social media, you'll see how the last 3 holes kind of turned out. It wasn't great, but had a great time doing that. We're hoping to maybe connect with the pro golfers up there and maybe interview some of those folks. I think, we've been talking to the Canadian traveler guy and the UK golf guy, and both of them just made really good points. Golf can be found anywhere. I think I paid like $20 for 9 holes. I did have to buy some balls and tees and a wrong-handed glove, which that was my mistake. But you get to go out, play 9 holes, and then just enjoy the weather and sun. So we are finally back home. It is in my head. We record this at 8 o'clock on Monday. So right now in my head, it's 1 a.m. So I apologize, Seth, if I get a little foggy or doze off. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with jet lag. So, but yeah, not a bad way to spend 30 days.
Yeah, that's great, man. Glad you're back.
Yeah, so over the weekend, I didn't watch any because I was sleeping, trying to recover. But there was a couple tour events where I was like to cover those just a little bit. An LPGA event, the Evian Championship. Is that the water? Is that sponsored by water?
Yeah, it's one of the 5 majors on the LPGA tour.
Are you only allowed to drink water whenever you're on the course, or like do you have to keep it in some little bottle?
Wherever the logo is, yeah.
Evian spelled backwards, naive. I don't know what that says about bottled water, but they're not a sponsor, so it's okay if we can say that now. Celine Boudier got her first French winner for the Evian Championship. So, I think we ran into each other on the Champs-Élysées during the Tour de France, but she wasn't playing golf that day. And then on the Senior Open, Alex Cheka, definitely didn't say that right. Did I say that
Cheka.
right?
Yeah, Cheka.
Okay. Won on the Champions Tour, and the 3M Extra Tape Open. Lee Hodges got his first career win. So nice to see a couple people winning for the first time. I don't, it goes back to how deep we always keep talking about the professional tours are. How good you have to be that even people that have never won before still get a chance. So congratulations to all those folks. But as we always say, we're not here to talk about the PGA. Robby, why don't you introduce who we got today?
Yeah, I will. Well, Alex Cheka. I don't know if you saw the end. So the Senior Open is their major, right? Their British Open major. The weather on Sunday was horrible. If you see that, it was pretty cool. Cheka has won 3 times on the Senior Tour, the Champions Tour, and all 3 have been majors. And then as we roll into our guest, Lee Hodges was the winner yesterday. He's an Alabama guy. And I've already mentioned and confessed to Seth, I'm a Gamecock. And our guest, Seth McWhorter, is a Georgia Bulldog. So, Seth, we appreciate you being here. Let me say a couple things. Seth, he is the founder of McWhorter Creative. We'll talk more about that. From Athens, Georgia, originally living in Rome, Georgia. And he specializes in marketing, illustration, logo creation, kind of graphic design, all the really cool things that you see on golf shirts and hats and everything that people spend a ton of money for in clubhouses around the world. So, Seth, we appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, as we kind of get started, what got you into golf? Like, did you play growing up? I see on your website you say you're a pretty good golfer that doesn't travel well. I like that quote. But how did you get involved with golf?
Yeah, so I grew up playing a lot of tennis. My older brother was a great tennis player, and so was very fortunate to grow up going out to Athens Country Club. Grew up in Athens, Georgia, and kind of followed my brother's footsteps. Played a ton of junior tennis, and then sort of got burnt out on it. By the time I was probably 14 or 15. I'd always mess around with golf, and played with my dad. Was a good golfer growing up, and my freshman year in high school, I officially quit tennis and went all in on golf. I think again, being fortunate enough to kind of be a country club brat growing up, I was able to, I had access to a great course at Athens Country Club, and really kind of hit the ground running. Played a ton of junior golf towards the end of high school. I was not the caliber to play anywhere notable. Collegiately, I was not recruited by any sense, but I stayed in the game until the end, and decided, I just didn't really want to do the college golf thing, and decided to go across the street to UGA and just have fun in college. But I've stayed close to the game throughout throughout college and beyond. So I went to UGA to study landscape architecture, and that was in 2006, and actually had an idea in mind of getting into golf course architecture. Okay. And about halfway through college, obviously the Great Recession hits, and it becomes clear that there's nobody's going to hire a landscape architecture grad out of undergrad, and I ended up staying in landscape architecture after I graduated, doing nothing to do with golf. I went up to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, to work for a land planning landscape architecture firm. And it was a great job. I was fortunate to get a job. A lot of my classmates, couldn't find anything, and they're, doing other things now as well. But yeah, I did that for a couple of years, designing parking lots. Kind of, we get these great projects for the company, but not necessarily for a young guy out of college. You get a 3-acre piece of property and say, we got to put a Wendy's on this site, and we got to have 65 parking spaces, and there's got to be room for a drive-through, and I design that. But throughout that program, the landscape architecture program at Georgia, I learned a lot about illustration, typography, design. We took some sort of preliminary art classes, and even before I graduated, I was very interested in that stuff. I was really interested in sketching and drawing. And really that kind of carried through into that job. And after a couple of years in that job, I started to look around and think, I feel like I got some skills in other things. And it's kind of a funny way to get into it, but it's very 2011, 2012. I started a Tumblr page, a blog of just like sketches and illustrations. Again, none of it was golf related. It was just kind of stream of consciousness, random stuff. But I got a lot of encouragement from friends and family. Kind of dabbled in designing T-shirts and just random kind of funny stuff. And so throughout that time, I stayed close to golf. Played a little bit of amateur golf, and then mid amateur stuff. And I decided to go back to school in 2013 to actually do a design program, a real program, and I found a school in Atlanta called the Creative Circus, and it's a advertising portfolio school, and it's a 2-year program. They offer art direction, design, copywriting, and all of it is to build a portfolio to get you hired in an ad agency. And so I got halfway through that program and got an internship with an ad agency in Atlanta. And they ended up hiring me. And so I figured, I got a job. Why am I paying to go to school? And so I left that program and got hired as a designer. Ended up as an art director in the agency, which is similar skill set but doing slightly different stuff. And I ended up in that as an art director at Fitzgerald and Company in Atlanta, working on some great. We had some great clients. We did a lot of Coca-Cola work. Our big client was Navy Federal Credit Union. But just kind of really concepting commercials, ad campaigns, social media campaigns, stuff like that. But throughout that time, I still was able to kind of stay with design work. And probably about 2017, 2018, got a couple golf related clients, and I started to look around and see, man, there's a lot of need for design in the golf industry, and creative thinking and marketing in the golf industry, and obviously with COVID and we've seen the golf boom over the past 5 years, really. I kind of rode that wave and got hooked up with some great people in the golf industry, and fast forward to now, and I feel like I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of great clients. But yeah, that's the quick story that got me all the way to here.
That's awesome.
What was the first golf logo that you designed?
I think so in 2018, I actually went back and looked recently because I felt like it was exactly 5 years ago about this time. I came home, it was probably Friday night. I got married in 2015, so we were living in Atlanta. I'm sitting there with my wife, probably late, 10 o'clock on a Friday night. I'm complaining about what's going on at the ad agency, and just kind of griping about what's going on. And I was on YouTube, and I stumbled across the No Laying Up guys, and they had posted one of their early videos of them playing. I think it's called Warhammer, at I think Greenville Country Club. And I was just enraptured by this video of just 5 guys to 4 guys, whatever, playing a round of golf, and it just really struck a chord with me. It felt like some of my buddies playing, and I started doing a little digging and figured out that a couple of those guys are from Atlanta, and I probably had a few drinks in me and fired off an email to like their info@nolayingup.com or whatever, and just said, hey, I live in Georgia. I'm from Atlanta, or I live in Atlanta. Big golfer, stayed close to the game, and this is what I do. This is my skill set. If you guys need anything, I'd love to work with you. And Tron Carter at No Laying Up got back to me probably within a day or two and said, just so happens that we need some help with it was the Ryder Cup, 2018 Ryder Cup, leading up to that in Paris. And he said, listen, we have a logo, we have some design assets that we sort of are putting on merchandise, but we'd love to do a run of sort of Ryder Cup related merchandise. And so I took their now iconic logo and kind of incorporated it into some Ryder Cup themed designs, and they put it on merchandise, and I think it did reasonably well with them. That kind of snowballed into, they hooked me up with Zach Blair at the Buck Club, and so I think the No Laying Up stuff for the Ryder Cup was probably the first real golf project I had, and I didn't know what I was getting into at the time, and this is pre-COVID, obviously, but I was again just so fortunate to be hooked up with those guys as they were on the rise. And obviously now they're killing it in everything they do. But they've been a great proponent of my work, and they've hooked me up with a lot of great clients and given me a lot of sort of exposure in the golf world. But I think that was probably the first truly golf related client I had.
Yeah, I've been a big fan. I binged all their Strapped episodes, and I saw your Icarito design. So I thought that was very good. So yeah, they're great. Well, you talk about them taking stuff and putting it on merchandise. What is it about a golf logo that makes people just go nuts? I mean, you think of the Masters, right? I'm sure being in Georgia, you've been, but you go to the Masters and you see people in the pro or the merchandise shops just buying thousands of shirts, right, and hats and all this stuff. But what is it about a logo at a course, or some golf related logo, that makes people just kind of empty their pocketbook, right? Say there's no, forget the budget. I'm buying everything.
Yeah, I mean it's something that having done work outside of the golf industry, I quickly realized that the way, and I sort of realized this as I got into it, looking back on my own experience, people interact with golf logos, to your point, way differently than they do any other industry. I think that stories and experiences in golf, when you get to play a course that maybe you get access to something that you wouldn't otherwise get to play, all of a sudden the logo becomes sort of the marker for that experience. And I think that that sort of whether it is speaking to something you have got to experience, or it's aspirational where you get access to like who gets to play Augusta National, but you go to the Masters, you get to buy the merchandise, and it's sort of proof that you were there. So I think that it's that sort of experience, and the backstory of your own personal interaction with the brand, so to speak, is what makes people so they latch on to golf logos in a way that it just doesn't happen in other industries, and it makes it it puts a lot of pressure on someone like me when I get the chance to work with a club or golf brand where people are just they're rabid fans of it because they're going to wear it on their shirt, and they're going to wear it on their body, and they're going to get questions about it, and that's one thing that's so interesting about the way people interact with the branding is it's often that jumping off point, that when someone sees you in the airport with a whatever shirt on, and they say, hey, what's that? Or if they know it, hey, have you played that course? It's just this great icebreaker, where all of a sudden the person wearing the logo gets to tell a story about themselves. And I think that's kind of what I try to capture on behalf of my clients, is just having a logo or an identity or something that is the spark to a great conversation or a great connection through golf.
Yeah, kind of walk us through that process. If you're a country club or something, how does that begin for you to begin to, I guess, understand what they're trying to accomplish, who they are, and then transforming that into some sort of logo, digital icon of some kind?
Yeah, it's super interesting trying to oftentimes a large part of my job, when a club or a course brings me in to do some work, is to get them to tell me what is special about their club or their course. What are the interesting backstories about the club? Everybody's got whether it be sort of characters that are members of this club, or iconic architectural pieces or objects on the course. But I'm really, when I first meet with somebody, I'm trying to ask as many questions as I can to get them to tell me things that they're not thinking of that could become icons for their brand. If you look around the golf world, even before, again, this sort of COVID golf boom, there are a lot of courses out there that have these really obscure, sort of random logos that speak to an obscure part of their history, and I think that works in their favor because it requires someone to ask a question. And I think with design and branding, if you got people talking about the brand and talking about a logo, then you've done something good. So that's kind of what I try to uncover when I meet with clients or clubs, is just tell me, as much about the place and the people and the history of it that you can. I think some designers kind of approach certain projects with a level of, I don't know, ego is probably not the right way to say it, but just, I'm the guy that's going to come in and solve the problem. Where in golf, it's like, if a club reaches out to me from the Pacific Northwest, I've never been there, they're going to know the course in their club and what's going to resonate with their membership better than I ever will. So I have to ask all the right questions to get them to sort of uncover that unique thing, that potentially could translate to their visual identity.
Do you try to go on site if possible to see that, or do you typically have calls like this where you're just zooming in? And
Yeah, it's a little bit. I mean, more and more, I've tried to prioritize, getting on site, and if I'm fortunate enough to play with whoever's brought me in, and kind of, really dive in and get to know some of the members, or people that that know and love the course. I do that as much as possible, and I got two little kids, so it's a little bit harder to justify getting on the road, but when I do, it's always super helpful, and I think that oftentimes when you're standing on a tee box, or something with a whoever's reached out, and they're looking across and they say, oh, well, that little barn or whatever it is that's been there the whole time, we call it the such and such barn, and it's like, oh, well, like maybe that should be, that could inspire an idea for the logo, or we had this character that plays every Thursday, and it's just kind of stuff like that you only get if you're there and experiencing the place with them. But yeah, there's plenty of instances where I just do it all remotely. But again, it's just kind of asking a lot of questions that hopefully lead to interesting solutions.
Do you feel like you have a certain style that people are looking for, or do you really think the magic is in trying to find out what's special about that particular thing?
Yeah, I think if I'm doing my job well, I have to be ready to jump into multiple different types of graphic styles. I think that golf certainly has its sort of tried and true. A lot of things have become sort of cliche, but they have some visual symbols that obviously sort of are used throughout the golf industry, especially when it comes to logos and club branding. But I try to dig a little deeper and find find an interesting story, or a tidbit, or something that's unique to that club, and then I let that drive the style or the approach that I take. I certainly have a style that I fall back on, and I don't know that it's something I could peg down and describe very easily. But a lot of my stuff is I mean, people have described it as sort of whimsical and playful. And I think that certainly resonates with younger golfers, and hopefully older golfers too. But I think that really, once you kind of hone in on the concept, or whatever the idea that's driving the branding, you got to be ready to sort of interpret it in multiple styles to figure out what's going to fit with the client and their their membership. Golf is obviously it's rich in tradition, and so I think that if you look at some of the older clubs, they all feel of a similar style when it comes to their logos and their branding, from a graphic standpoint. And a lot of that's driven by what they're putting the merchandise on. It's got I can't tell you how many times I've met with somebody in the membership that's brought me on to do a logo for their club, and they'll introduce me to the head pro, the assistant pro, and they'll say, I don't care what you do, but as long as it can be embroidered, as long as it'll stitch out on a hat or a shirt. And it's like, yeah, in the back of my head, I'm saying, of course we're gonna make sure it embroiders, but that's just the way people think about it. In a lot of instances, it's kind of how simple can we make this thing? So that is its own little puzzle, is figuring out, we've got this great idea and it's really cool, but like, how the heck are we going to embroider that at an inch by an inch? And so you got to be ready to kind of solve those problems from a graphic standpoint, based on what the idea is.
Yeah. What's the oddest request that you've had so far? Inch by inch.
Yeah. Well, everybody overestimates the capability of embroidery machines. I think it's always like, we've got this great idea. We want it to be, like this animal, but it's got to have this detail, or else we're not going to know it's this specific animal. And it's like, well, look, when you shrink that down, like, we're going to lose all that detail. And so, it's a little bit difficult, but I think that, some of the things that I've done, what we end up having to do is say, like, look, we're going to have we're going to have a set of logo assets, identity that is you're going to use that on digital and print, and it's going to have more detail and all that kind of good stuff. But when we translate it down to embroidery, it may be simplified. And so the trick is to maintain that uniqueness and make sure that it is, it speaks to whatever it is we're trying to capture. Gosh, I mean, I've it's kind of crazy to think about over the past 4 or 5 years, the different things that I've had to tackle. But off the top of my head, I'm thinking about, I worked with a group of guys they're starting a little direct consumer business where they had a product that was like for cleaning golf clubs, and they were going to call it Club Suds. And it was like a rubber ducky was the idea we sort of landed on. And it was like a rubber ducky. It's like, well, how do we get golf into that? And it's like, my solution was like, let's put a tour visor on them. You know what I mean? It's like, let's put a tour visor on a rubber ducky. It's like, well, how does that translate down that tiny little inch by inch space? But that's the fun of it is sort of taking that initial concept and figuring out a way to make it work across all the different ways you use it. Because I don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is absolutely true, but I can't imagine any other industry where the branding or your logo gets put on so many different types of items than the golf. I mean, it's got to work obviously on the chest of a shirt, but it may be emblazoned on the front of a cart, or bigger than that. So it's a fun puzzle to figure out with each individual client, and it's one that I think that my background in the advertising world certainly helps. Some of the technical aspects, some of the things you don't really think about, like providing the right files and all the right kind of stuff, and knowing what's going to translate down to small sizes and all that kind of stuff. It's really, I've been amazed at how much of my skill set from my past lives have come into play in what I'm doing now.
You mentioned the no laying up guys. Who are some of the other, and I've seen, you've done stuff for Pinehurst. Who are some of the clients that you've really enjoyed working with, and I guess some of the logos that you've gotten to do for folks like that?
Yeah. So the no laying up guys immediately, right off the bat, hooked me up with Zach Blair, and Zach's obviously, well known in the golf world. He is an extremely creative guy in his own right. What he's done with the Buck Club, it's kind of funny trying to explain that to somebody, not in the golf space. It's like, it's a now obviously the Tree Farm is his course that he's helped build. But before that, it was just sort of the idea of a golf course, and he started this brand around it. And I mean, like, it's kind of weird to think about selling merchandise for a golf club that doesn't exist. But I think, he was one of the first people that, again, sort of put my work out there, and he's a great creative partner to feed me a lot of cool ideas that I was able to sort of execute on. I think shortly after getting sort of hooked up with him, a couple years later, I got to know Matt Adamski at Sweetens Cove, and I met Rob Collins, who designed Sweetens, and they have been just awesome clients to have. Matt is similar to Zach in a lot of ways, that he's got a ton of ideas for whether it be for merchandise that they want to sell for Sweetens Cove, or event branding, which is a big part of what I do. And I think clients like that are able to come, they have ideas, and they have sort of a general direction, or sort of a notion of where they want to take something, and I'm able to sort of jump in and help with the execution. Those have been the most rewarding clients to work with. But on the flip side of that, through the same connections, I've been so happy to work with people at like Pinehurst, for example, who have an incredibly valuable, long storied brand, where I'm not necessarily messing with those sort of iconic things. Like, I'm sitting here, I got a Pinehurst cup right here. They'd never hire me to mess with the putter boy, and nor would I suggest that we should. But on the edges, whether it be merchandise or events, they're doing a lot of fun stuff. And it's rewarding to work with a lot of different types of clients that have different design sensibilities. And I think that it sort of broadened my skill set to be able to work in different styles that will work for a 20 something, early 30s millennial golfer that's going to play Sweetens Cove, and they show up and they know that all they got is a porta potty. There's no club, men's locker room, all that kind of stuff. But also turn around and then work for somebody like a Pinehurst. It's just it's a fun challenge to have to kind of shift your mindset and solve problems for different people.
Yeah. Are you doing? I know you did number 8's logo at Pinehurst. Are you doing anything with number 10?
They have not reached out for that. I would love to. Yeah, number 8 was funny. I was obviously tickled to get that project, and it was funny. When I started kind of tinkering with ideas for that, obviously the number 8, was the first thing that we started messing with. But digging a little deeper and asking questions, turned out to be their centennial course. They built it 100th anniversary of the resort. And I'm sitting there and I'm doodling, the number 8 hundreds of times, on my iPad or on, Post-it notes. And I drew a number 8 and I drew a line under it. And then I turned the Post-it note and it's like, oh, it's a 100. And then I, kind of cleaned it up and packaged it in a few different ways. And I shared it with the people at Pinehurst. And I kind of, in the back of my mind, I was like, that's kind of a no brainer. Like that's what they got to do. Like, and Tom Pashley, who's the president of Pinehurst, is a great guy, been a big, sort of ally and client of mine. He called me and he said, Seth, like I saw your initial concepts for number 8, and I kind of felt like you mailed it in a little bit. And I was like, oh no, like Tom, like, well, why do you say that? And he got sidetracked and we got off the phone, and I was like, well, gosh, man, I must have just whiffed on this. And he called me back shortly after that. He's like, man, so-and-so, in the office just turned the logo on its side and showed me the 100. That's brilliant. And it's like, it's, it's one of those things where, the little details like that could be easily missed. But I think that when you're able to do that in a logo, it doesn't happen all that often, where you have that sort of hidden meaning in something, where that sort of aha moment for someone that's looking at it fresh. It's something that if you can capture that, it's really neat. And I think it worked out. I was happy with what they did with it, and I was excited to see that out in the world.
That's like the one time where explaining the joke is very beneficial.
That's right. Yeah, rarely is that the case. And again, it doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, it is kind of cool. It's like it almost strengthens makes it a lot more memorable and sticky in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've seen some videos of your home office setup there. You've got a shed in the backyard that you've kind of built up, and I mean it looks pretty sweet. So tell us a little bit about that. That's like the layer, right? That's the where the mastermind and all the brainstorming happens.
Yeah, this has been a dream come true. I was down in the basement when we first moved up to Rome. Obviously, everybody was working from home. It was probably within 6 months after we moved, COVID hit, and so I set up a great office space in the basement. We had our first child at the time, and so we had a ton of room. She didn't need a lot of room to roam. And then when we had our second, a couple of years after that, it was like, man, things are getting tight in here, and my space was becoming less and less sacred, and frankly less and less important for me to have my own dedicated space. But we had this shed out in our backyard. It was just like a tough shed from Home Depot or whatever. And it was just on skids, basically kind of floating off the ground. And finally I just kind of had the gall to tell my wife, look, I'm going to build an office. So I had a buddy come out who's a builder and you put on a real foundation and now I'm getting to use sort of my, landscape architecture skills. I take a lot of pride in the yard. So it was nice to build this out and landscape around it, but it's become my own little haven. Obviously I still got some kids' toys in here and some crayons and stuff, but yeah, it's my wife is very kind to kind of give me my own space. But it's helped a lot. I do coming from the advertising agency world where you got a whole creative department together in one space, you're obviously, creativity certainly feeds on itself. And I do miss that, but having a dedicated space is at least the right step towards that. But I still have to go, work in a coffee shop just to interact with other human beings from time to time. But yeah, this has been like I said, a dream come true to have my own little space, little hideout back here. But it's been great. Yeah, going on a year now, and able to house all my my wife calls all my golf crap, all the head covers and stuff like that we've been able to design. But yeah, it's worked out really well.
Well, and if you have someone ask about your staff, you can talk about your junior creatives, because you said there's crowns and other little toys and things like that. So you've got a whole team there. Just happens to be of different sizes.
Yeah, I'm grooming them. If they can't play golf, maybe they can get into what I do. But yeah, no, I get a lot of my sort of, I don't know, creativity, if you will, from my mom. My mom's she's always been my mom's an English teacher, a high school English teacher for 30 something years, but she's very artistic. She's always had a ton of different hobbies, crafts, stuff like that. So I think I get a little bit of that from her, or a lot of it from her. And I'm already starting to see it. I have a 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and she's she's all into drawing, and so I'll hand her some client work every now and then, see if she comes up with something I couldn't. But no, it's great. It's been fun to have them hang out in the office every now and then, and just spend some time out here.
Well, back to a little bit of golf. You had said you've been playing for a while. I think you said since high school, and got a chance to play at some pretty nice clubs. What we always ask all of our guests: what's your best golf shot? What's your best ball that you've hit so far? Maybe a hole in one, or just somewhere special that felt pure.
Well, I'm trying to think. We're talking about Zach Blair and all the stuff he does. He started hosting that event, The Ringer, a few years ago, where at first it was kind of just his buddies in the golf industry, and I got to go up and play the second one at a Dormy Club up near Pinehurst, and he did. He gives out crystal for eagles, and if you get an eagle, he runs out there. He doesn't play normally. He'll hit a shot here and there, but he's in a golf cart usually. And I think it was the first day we were playing in that, and I think I hit a pitching wedge from like 140, 145, and just jarred it out of the Dormy Club, and it was the first eagle of the event, and so Zach pulls up in his golf cart, and we're shooting fireworks and all that kind of stuff. So I still got that ball. That's definitely a memorable one. But yeah, I think a lot of golfers have that sort of photographic memory or whatever of every shot they've ever hit. Mine is not so good. I don't know what I've done in my life to what's prevented me from that. But yeah, that one definitely that one comes to mind for sure.
Still waiting on your hole in one?
I'm still waiting on it. Yeah, I've yet to have one. At this point, I feel like if I haven't gotten it by now, it probably never happened.
No,
I'll say that we're still waiting.
Yeah, over in England, I met a guy. He had his first hole in one. He's like 72 years old.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, hopefully, I'll get mine before then. But yeah, I'm still waiting on that. I can't say I've definitely put it close a few times, and maybe caved in a cup once or twice, but I don't feel like it's been all that close.
Hitting the green is a good day for me. So maybe someday I'll get a hole in one, but not yet. Robby and I are still missing ours. Well, we like to do a fun thing called the Quick Nine, but before we jump into that, we do a Ryder Cup contest coming up. So if you've been listening this long, just waiting with bated breath to see what our keyword of the week was going to be. The word of the week is Worcester. But Seth, like I said, we like to do Quick Nine. So just quick 9 questions back and forth from me and Robby. You can elaborate if you want to, short answers if you choose. The first one is, what is the favorite course that you've been able to play so far?
Peachtree in Atlanta is all-time favorite. But close second is my home course of Athens Country Club in Athens is a truly a hidden gem. But Peachtree is special, and that's probably number 1 on my list.
All right.
What's your favorite snack on the course? Like any good halfway houses or food options out there on any of the courses that you've played?
This is past couple of years. I mean, it's become sort of a a thing in the golf world. It's the Uncrustable is kind of unbeatable on the golf course. It's a you put it in your bag. You pick it up frozen, and on the next hole, it's thawed out and ready to go. So the Uncrustable is pretty hard to beat.
And with 2 little kids at home, you probably have some laying around, so it's not hard to find them before you walk out.
We got plenty to spare.
All right. So what is your favorite club in the bag?
7-iron. 7-iron is like, that's when I get on the range. If I got 5 minutes to hit, 7-iron is what I grab. And I think just because I've hit it so many times, that's what I reach for.
That is the most popular answer, I think, for
Is it
anybody
really?
who ever asked that question.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
sure.
I mean, I think that's both Jonathan and I's favorite club. I don't know what I answer for Jonathan, but
No,
anyway.
100%.
Yep.
Anywhere from 250 to 150.
Depends on how bad you thin it, right?
That's right.
Exactly.
Who, if you could pick a dream foursome, who would, and you could play anywhere, who would be in your foursome?
Well, it might be cheesy. I'd take my dad for sure. He's who I grew up playing with. I'm a product of the late '90s, early 2000s, so Tiger's got to be in there. And then for the fourth, I'd probably have to reach for my brother might have to be who I fill that out. He'd be pretty pissed if I didn't include him in that foursome. But yeah, no, I mean, I grew up when I played golf, just for fun, before I really took it up seriously. That was, me, my dad, my brother, that'd be who we play. So, yeah, those two plus Tiger would be pretty awesome foursome.
That would be a lot of fun.
Tiger might be the answer to this one, but is he your favorite pro as well?
Yeah, he is. I've been fortunate growing up, in Georgia, playing junior golf in Georgia. When I was at UGA, there was, half the tour was on Georgia's team. And so I was nowhere near their caliber, but got to play with some of those guys in junior golf. Become friends with Keith Mitchell out on tour. And he's great guy, funny dude. But honestly,
one of the best dressed on tour as well.
That's right. Yeah. And he leans into it. He knows it. Yeah, I mean, it's great to see some of those Georgia boys playing out on tour. And I mean, they always pop up week to week. And to see Brian do what he did a couple weeks ago was incredible. I mean, I grew up playing went to a little private school, Athens Academy in Athens. And we were, the smallest classification in Georgia high school golf. And I think Brian played at Savannah Christian or Savannah Country Day, whatever, but they were our big rival. And so I can confidently say he's the most talented golfer I've seen play. So seeing him do what he did last week was no surprise.
I thought you were going to say you beat him whenever you were in high school.
Oh,
but he
God,
kept
no.
getting better.
No, I got too many people that would call me out on that if I tried to claim that.
Do you have so I help define it better, a realistic bucket course? I mean, I think everybody, maybe you've already played Augusta, but I don't know if that's realistic for everybody to say, but do you have a bucket list course, like the top of the list?
Augusta would certainly be up there. I've never played it. I've been out there enough and just, obviously would kill to do it. No, and I've never been overseas to play. I haven't been to Scotland or Ireland to play. I've done a couple of projects with, overseas, and it would be just a dream to go over there and spend a week or two playing any number of those courses. But no, not one that really jumps out at the moment. But yeah, I mean, if you pin me down, it definitely be Augusta, which is probably the most cliche answer I could give you.
No, that is one of the most popular ones. Well, I saw your logo for Spey Bay. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, well, that was super fun, and that would be high up on the list to get over there and see it. Those guys at Lynx, it's pretty impressive what they've put together in terms of that community and following through on their promise to buy a course. So hopefully one day I'll get over there and play that. But yeah, that's certainly on the list as well.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan and I keep talking about we need to make a trip and do that as well and spend some time. So maybe we'll all connect and go play some.
There you go. I love it.
Shoot, we might just drive up to Athens. It's only a couple hours away. Maybe we could
meet them there.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
That it's not Europe. It's not Ireland or anything, but Still not a bad place to play golf.
I'd be just as happy, I think.
So I'm probably going to be jealous by your answer, but what is the best score you've ever shot, and where did you shoot that?
Well, I think I've shot 66 is the lowest round I've ever put up. That would have been in high school or shortly after high school. And that would have been on the home course. And this gets back to what's on my website in terms of a handicap that doesn't travel well. You know, again, being lucky enough to have access to a course growing up. I played Athens Country Club, 2,000 times. And then my little home course up here in Rome, Cusa Country Club, which is actually under construction. They're redoing it. Great course. But when you have access to a club, you play it, nonstop. And those scores start to drive your handicap down, which when you travel somewhere else, you can get burned pretty quick.
Maybe we need a neutral course before we start trying to hang out with 66.
That would equalize it quite a bit, I'm sure.
What's the best logo in golf? Let me ask that.
Man, I got asked this question a couple weeks ago, and I gave a mealy mouth answer because it's so hard. There are one that pops up that I always enjoy because it doesn't have any overt golf imagery in it is Maidstone. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that one with the whale and the waves. Like that's an example of a logo that was probably sketched on the back of a napkin in like the 20s or before, and has stood the test of time, and it doesn't shoehorn in a bunch of overt golf imagery. So I love that one.
Yeah. All right. So let me ask this then: if you could pick a course to kind of redesign their logo, right? Like nobody's going to tweak the Masters logo, but is there one that you would? Man, I'd love to do an alternate logo for.
So it may sound arrogant or I don't know, self-serving to say this, but because I've never been there. I haven't been out to Bandon Dunes yet. I maybe get myself in hot water here, but I'm not a huge fan of their primary logo they use for the overall resort. I don't know, it feels like a college something they'd slap on a helmet. But that would be one where I'd love to take a stab at that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of those is when people ask me that question and I kind of get asked to critique a logo that's out there, I always kind of stop myself because I know how hard it is to get to sell through a design and have something made and embraced by a club. And so every time I want to give an opinion, I'm like, well, I know how tough it is. So I don't want to criticize anybody's work.
Yeah, never tell somebody their kids doesn't look the greatest, right?
That's right. You don't do that.
Well, it's tough. I mean, I imagine, with what you do, you got a critical eye, right? Like you got a creative eye on how you want to design. Like if you were starting from scratch and like you said, you get to have that interaction, ask questions. And so when when you're looking at other logos, you have a more of a critical eye where it's, I wouldn't have done that maybe, or, I know a little bit here, I might use this element in the design. So, yeah, probably good on you for not bringing anybody down. But Seth, man, it's been fun to follow your work on social media, and your website. I highly encourage everybody that's listening or watching to check out McWhorter Creative, follow McWhorterCreative.com for his website. Hire him, right? If you've got an idea about something, if you're a course or a golf company or something like that, and you say, hey, we need something new, we need something to start with, please give Seth a call. I'm pretty sure you're backed up with all the things you're doing. I imagine you've got a list that's building, especially if Zach Blair keeps you busy, and the no laying up guys.
Yeah, no, it is. I say this a lot, and it doesn't get any less true. I'm so lucky to be so busy. But no, I'm always excited when someone reaches out and has confidence in me to help them solve a problem or come up with something cool. And I embraced every challenge, but yeah, I'm a one-man show, so you kind of have to be careful of getting too much on your plate, which I do pretty consistently. But again, good problem to have, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, we tell everybody, but we definitely mean it. We would love to at some point connect with you, play some golf, maybe just hang out. Seem like a great guy, and really, we really like what you're doing. So keep it up. We'll be cheering you on, following along, trying to share some of your stuff, and yeah, it's been it's fun to watch what you're doing, just for guys like us that just like logos. So.
Yeah, and Robby and I keep dreaming about a little par 3 course maybe around here too. So if we ever get to designing that, we'll probably borrow your architectural design just for the parking lot, though. We think we've got the rest of it covered. But we hear you're pretty good at parking lots.
So we can get 3 cars in there. Yeah,
that's right. Well, I'm Jonathan for my buddy Robby, and for our guest Seth this week. We appreciate you listening to the Whole Story podcast. And listener, catch us next week.